President Trump meets with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House, with the world waiting on edge to see if Ukraine accepts Russia's proposal for peace.
President Vladimir Putin wants full control of 2 regions in eastern Ukraine. In exchange, Putin says he'll freeze the front line elsewhere, as long as the U.S. recognizes the land captured by Moscow.
President Trump briefed Zelenskyy on Russia's offer while speaking on the phone on the way back from his summit with Putin in Alaska. Reports show it was a difficult call, as Zelenskyy has previously rejected giving up the territory, but the commander-in-chief making it clear that a peace deal needs to be made over a ceasefire.
And Zelenskyy seemingly agrees, posting in part, "The positions are clear. A real peace must be achieved, one that will be lasting, not just another pause between Russian invasions."
Tomorrow marks his return to the White House since his testy Oval exchange with Trump and Vice President Vance in February. So we've got a map up on the wall, and it's pretty interesting. If you look at the contested region, is that part that is in red and blue, and that's the area that Zelenskyy does not, his original approach is he does not want to give up that territory. It's very important territory. It's where you have huge coal reserves, you have an industrial base, but you also have, that's what is often called the breadbasket of that part of the world. In dark red, though, is the area that Putin seized in 2014 when Joe Biden was vice president and Barack Obama was president. That has the strategic importance of reaching to the Black Sea, where Sevastopol is, which is where the Russian Navy is based out of. And so if you're going to look at this from the perspective of Vladimir Putin and what his strategic aims are, his aims are to improve his ability to reach Crimea. At present, the only way he can get to his naval base is going across that little peninsula there at the bottom, and he wants a direct land access to that.
But he doesn't need all of those 2 regions in order to get that.
No, but if you look right there at the top of the Sea of Azov, which is that sea that's above the Black Sea, he can't get to and the area in red, of course, is still contested by internationally, but for all intents and purposes, he has occupied it for over 10 years. So you can't really access it by land. You have to go across a bridge that goes across that little peninsula there at the bottom, and that's what. And right or wrong, Putin invaded, shouldn't have invaded, terrible guy, all that kind of stuff. Right or wrong, that's what he's looking at.
So here's what else he wants. He wants Ukraine to cede, as you mentioned, control of the Donetsk and how do I say that again?
Donetsk.
And then he wants to freeze front lines in Kherson and Zaporizhia. He wants the U.S. to recognize Russia's sovereignty over all captured lands.
Which would include that land going back to 2014.
Correct. Crimea.
Crimea, yeah,
Correct.
Exactly.
And this is what Russia concedes: willingness to negotiate over small slivers of Sumy and Kharkiv. Regions open to those regions. And then he says he wants he was willing to be open to discussing security guarantees for Ukraine.
What's interesting about this is, this looks like on paper a raw deal for Ukraine. If these were 2 powers at war that were essentially in an actual stalemate by themselves, the kind of obvious secret is Ukraine can't sustain the fight by themselves. But then you hear those same people say that Russia is on the brink of economic disaster if they continue to fight. So maybe it is more of an honest stalemate than you can tell. I guess the question is, what are those security guarantees? If you listen to Putin, he says half the reason he did this to begin with was Ukraine's flirting with NATO. But if I'm Zelenskyy, and I'm not advocating for this, I'm saying if I'm Zelenskyy, I'm saying the only way I'm comfortable giving up that much of my territory is to have some sort of security agreement with NATO. And does that mean NATO troops in Ukraine? What does that mean for Zelenskyy? Obviously, Putin's not going to be happy about that. So it seems like Zelenskyy's linchpin, which makes sense, is what can you do?
What are my security guarantees?
How can I make sure Russia doesn't do this again?
Right. And my understanding from reading this, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, was Russia saying, or Putin saying, you can have security guarantees, but it didn't say NATO. So
Yeah.
there's some sort of other security guarantee. I don't understand that. But
Although there was some reporting in the New York Post last night suggesting that maybe Putin would be open to certain troops in that area, I guess, in the farther northern area of the contested region, which and we have no idea. Putin did not say that publicly, but if that were true, as you point out, that would be like a pretty significant deal for him to accept something like that.
Well, what we do know is that President Trump told Sean Hannity that this is all up to Zelenskyy. Listen.
There are millions of people killed. I mean, it's the worst thing since I see everyone saying worst since World War II by far. There's nothing even close. But we had a very good meeting today, and I think a lot of points were negotiated on behalf of Ukraine and on behalf of the whole NATO situation, where we're dealing very well with a lot of foreign countries that are great, European countries. Look, as far as I'm concerned, there's no deal until there's a deal. But we did make a lot of progress. We were together almost 3 hours, and it was very extensive. And we agreed on a lot of points. I mean, a lot of points were agreed on. But there's not that much. There's, one or two pretty significant items, but I think they can be reached. Now it's really up to President Zelenskyy to get it done.
And it is true, and then you listen to people like Chuck Schumer, who are already poo-pooing all of this, saying that this is an unworkable deal and this will never happen. There are people who, you have to deal, like you said, Joey, is this a raw deal for Ukraine? Of course it's a raw deal for Ukraine. But at the end of the day,
getting invaded was a raw deal for Ukraine.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a war.
Yeah. No, and it sucks. It's
I think
terrible.
the one thing that both Zelenskyy and Putin would like is a deal that doesn't have them just amassing arms on that border for the future, because that's just such an expensive thing to have to do for either country. Yeah. And that maybe is the biggest role President Trump can play, is if we create this border, here's how we keep peace.
And by the way, part of it is just where Ukraine is on the map. I mean, it's their fate, right? They're between this giant power and Europe, and there's sort of this in-between.
Really.
And that's just its fate. But, a lot of
and again, again, I'm not, defending anybody here, but, for many years since the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia has rented Sevastopol in the Black Sea from Ukraine, and had access. Obviously, he took Crimea in 2014, at least physically he did. And if you're going to think about it from Putin's perspective, if you suddenly have NATO marching eastward, and then you have people talking about including Ukraine in NATO. You can kind of see why he might be like, actually, if I want to get to my naval base, other than having to take a United flight around the world to get there, then it's gonna be sort of a problem for me. And so that doesn't make him a better person, but it's reality.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.